So the questions are not intended to be difficult. Okay, don't think everyone knows the answer. The idea is to discuss and get some points from these. So I'm sure all of you will get all the questions right. So which of these are measured components on the blood gas? So this was on Dr. Krishna's first slide. So pH, bicarbonate, base excess, oxygen saturation, none of the above. So one of you want to say?
The pH. It's the pH.
Yes. So the pH is the only measured one here. That's correct. We have the PCO2 and oxygen also, the PaO2 which are measured. All the others are calculated. The oxygen saturation is calculated based on the hemoglobin and your oxygen PaO2. The base excess and bicarbonate are calculated from the pH and the carbon dioxide based on the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. So that's where the discrepancies in this corrections may manifest if you use that as a way to check if the gas is contaminated or not. I hope this point is clear. So contamination with air bubble in the blood gas will cause which of these? So drop in PCO2, rise if the PaO2 is normal, drop in PaO2 if high, and all of the above or none of the above. Anyone wants to answer? Someone is not muted. You mute yourself.
Drop in PaCO2
can happen.
Drop in PaCO2 can happen.
What is the correct answer?
Drop in PCO2.
Is that the only answer or all of the above?
All of the above. Right.
Yeah. So basically the room air has a PaO2 of 150. If you are mixing the air, the oxygen content is 150. So if you have a normal PaO2, it will make it higher. It will come closer to 150 with the air bubble contamination. If you have a high PaO2, it will drop. So that's also correct. And of course, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is only 0.03%. So very low. And the blood gas has 30 to 40. So when you mix this, it will drop quite significantly. So the most important effect will be in the carbon dioxide, but the other two are also correct. So the answer here will be all of the above. Be careful when you sample with the air bubbles, even the capillary tube, when you're holding it, if you're not holding it downwards, you may get a bubble in the middle. And with the syringe arterial stab, again, the needle bevel may come out of the artery and that may get a bubble in. So be careful how you sample. So this question is about hypocapnia, whether it is potentially more dangerous than permissive hypercapnia in a premature baby. Is it true or false?
True.
Oh, true.
So do you want to answer, Dr. Satish? Do you want to say why hypocapnia is dangerous?
It may lead to periventricular leukomalacia if it is prolonged.
Is it the carbon dioxide or is it something else?
Carbon dioxide, sir.
What does it do?
It may lead to periventricular leukomalacia in long
Explain
run.
how it leads to periventricular.
Lower carbon dioxide can cause a ischemia to the blood vessel will get constricted and that will reduce the blood supply and that will indirectly cause a
very good. So that's a perfect answer. So basically hypocapnia leads to vasoconstriction and ischemia. But remember that when you're overdoing ventilation, like possibly in the case we discussed, carbon dioxide washout also indicates overventilation, possible low perfusion because of the reduced cardiac output. So you have two factors to remember: the direct effect of the carbon dioxide on the cerebral vasculature, and also the reason why the carbon dioxide is low because you're overventilating, overdistending. That may also lead to ischemia. So you have ischemia due to two factors, and both are iatrogenic to some extent. In a baby on non-invasive ventilation, unless your pressures are very high, it's not much you can do. If the baby has recessions, you would still need the pressure. But these are relatively stable babies where the blood pressure doesn't drop and the risk is less. In a sick baby, you have to be very careful with the blood pressure monitoring and avoiding the overventilation in these babies. And to some extent, relieving the pain, as we discussed, keeping the temperature normal, keeping the perfusion and the volume normal, very important for all these factors. So Some of you may be using umbilical arterial lines. I think Dr. Prateen has the ability and Dr. Anand probably has, and some of you might be using it routinely. So you know that you need to take a drawback sample when you are infusing heparinase saline to keep the line patent. And when you take the sample, you need to take a drawback. So if you're not taking an adequate drawback, you get dilution. So how will you pick up there is a dilution on the blood gas? You may have inconsistent electrolytes, a lower pH, inconsistent base excess of bicarbonate, and all of the above. So what do you think?
All of above.
Yeah. So all of the above is correct. I mean, obviously the lower pH may be because of the heparin contamination, inconsistent base excess of bicarb because dilution effect will not affect the other components, and so the equation-based readings may be disturbed. If you're following the electrolytes, obviously hyponatremia, sometimes you get very low sodium levels because it's mainly the heparinase saline which is diluting significantly, so it won't be consistent. So be careful with the drawback sample because you are unnecessarily handling the baby again to take a repeat blood gas. The same thing we discussed earlier also, if you're planning to do a blood gas and you have limited ability to do repeated gases, do a suction, stabilize the baby well before you do it, and the timing is important. It's not mandatory to do a blood gas regularly on a baby or non-invasive if they're stable, but if they are ventilated, at least document one gas every day. And when you make significant changes or if you have severe metabolic acidosis. So if you're not doing a blood gas, you should be able to put it in your notes that there is a constraint why you're not doing it. And you can also say that these parameters are all normal. The heart rate is normal, blood pressure is normal, urine output is normal, and the baby FaO2 is reasonably reduced now. Carbon dioxide, you're keeping the settings low and planning to ventilate. So you can look at alternative parameters you're looking at to guide you, but still in a mechanically ventilated baby, at least one gas a day should be there for medical legal reasons. The last question for today, which of these factors is important in heel prick sampling? So again, appropriate size lancet. How many of you use lancets and how many of you use needles? Do all of you have access to lancets?
I use needle.
We use needles, sir.
Okay, try to get lancets. I mean, I know they're a little more expensive, but the limitations from the needle, I mean, the depth is not under control. It's according to the operator. You can easily reach the bone in the small babies, so which is dangerous. So you have the lancets which have the width as well as the depth to which they go, and because it's wider, the chances of getting a proper sample is better. So the lancet, I mean, if you have seen diabetic sampling, it just goes down when you press something. It quickly goes to the depth, which is, as long as you keep it firmly on the skin, it goes to the right depth. You have term size, you have preterm size, and you have micropreemie size. So the needle doesn't go, the blade doesn't go deep, and because it's wide, you have a better chance of bleeding adequately. And the appropriate site we will discuss next. Warm the heel adequately. So again, warming with the towel was mentioned in Dr. Krishna's presentation. I changed it to warming preferably with options which are suitable. So the towel warming, you have to be careful. There is a risk of overheating as well as it cools down quickly. Again, cost becomes a factor. You have to use what is locally available. We have the heel warmers, which similar to the isothermic mattresses. So you just break it open and connect it. The material will have an endothermic reaction and release heat. So that is a heel warmer, and relaxing adequately in between the squeeze. So the answer is obviously all of the above, but the points to stress, obviously, if your team is not adequately trained, they may be holding on tight, thinking that it will squeeze more. So that will actually hamper it because there is no blood coming into the feet, and also your arterialization is going to fail if you're squeezing because you're getting the last bit of the venous blood out. So remember to warm the heel well before you do it, and also not to squeeze hard. You have to allow filling for the heel to open up, the blood vessels to open up. So this is a image showing where you should do the heel prick. So it should be in the medial or lateral margins. In the central part, you are close to the bone and you may also injure the nerve. The side of the heels also should not be done too much laterally because the skin becomes thick and the bleeding doesn't happen well. If you're taking a larger sample, some of you might be used to putting liquid paraffin to avoid it blocking, but it's not recommended because it can affect the chemical analysis as well as it can clog your blood gas machine, which is quite expensive. So ideally, the arterializing the heel by warming and using the right lancet size, using the right technique. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have not practiced in India recently, but obviously, whether it is easy to get lancets or the cost effectiveness and so on, it's quite something to explore. So when we meet at the PCS, maybe we can discuss that more. So it will be coming up with benefit. And if people get together and do something on a group basis, you may get discounts. So that's an option as well. So in your region, you can discuss with colleagues. It's quite easy to get lancets, I think, and cost-effective options. If you show interest, Indian manufacturers may come up as well. And it's interesting that Dr. Latil said they don't use blenders in the labor room area. So that's another thing you have to improve, because we will be discussing in the next module on hyperoxia and the impact of that. So always be aware that we can't allow hyperoxia because oxygen toxicity leads to many other complications as well. So Dr. Moona, good evening. Nice to see you after a long time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so
Thank
sorry
you.
for not being with you last time.
I hope you're able to catch up online.
Yeah, sure.
It's
Thank you.
Ramadan this month, isn't it? So I hope it's going well.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Nishant, you have any comments? You're muted, Dr. Nishant. Can you unmute?
Yes, sir. It was a nice presentation. Actually, I wanted to ask about the iStat machine. So we
Yes.
have a regular ABG machine in our unit, but sometimes because of the non-availability of those diluents and other things, it stops working overnight. So we were planning to get an iStat. I wanted to know about the experience. Means, is it cost effective, and shall we get one?
I think, I mean, there are reliability issues, and cost is not cheaper in terms of running cost. You have limitations, like you can't use the capillary sample, and if it's an occasional sample and you want a handy unit which is portable, like you are sharing between units, maybe the iStat is an option if it's infrequent. But what Dr. Anand said about refurbished units is a good idea, and you can look at capillary options. You can also look at the lancets for use. Dr. Anand, you want to comment? And Dr. Prateen also has been using. So
even these companies give you on a higher basis, on consumption basis, rather than having a initial investment
like a
option.
loan. Yeah, good. Dr. Prateen, you want to comment?
Yes, sir. It's just like I've been running this iStats for like more than 1 year, and I don't see much changes in the blood gases and the pH and everything. But yes, definitely there are some issues with the hemoglobin, because in some the hemoglobin shows drastic decrease.
What samples do you use? Arterial line or?
Yes, sir.
USC, UVC.
Radial artery.
So that's a big limitation. If you can't use capillary samples, by practice, I mean, most of us are used to repair. I mean, arterial lines are not that routinely used unless the baby is really sick. And arterial stab is not without side effects as well. So that's one important consideration you have to keep in mind. If you have an option only to take syringe sample, it becomes a big limiting factor. You can't do capillary gases as much. So that's an important consideration when you choose your machine. Maybe for occasional gas, it's okay. You can do well or cannulating. That will be a venous gas. Arterial stab to repeat multiple times is not ideal. And if you're not used to maintaining a UAC, and there is a risk of thrombus in the future for the baby. So again, unnecessary insertion of umbilical lines isn't to be encouraged as well.
What is your experience regarding electrolytes in blood gases? I
You
feel
have to be
there is
alert. I mean, it depends a lot on
hyponatremia.
calibration. Yeah, it depends a lot on calibration and how they are fine-tuning each aspect of it. Even in the same machine, sometimes it fluctuates. So you always have to be alert. And if you have any concerns, we don't treat on the basis of electrolytes on the gas. You can use it as a trend, similar to the transcutaneous bilirubin and the lab bilirubin. So you use it as a trend, but if it's significantly abnormal, you always need a lab sample to confirm that.
But it becomes medically important because sometimes 124, 125, some sodium comes and baby is perfectly fine. So I have asked pathologist not to report that sodium electrolytes in a blood gas report.
What you could do is when you compare for the first time in the lab, you could document this difference. And the next time you say, as documented earlier, the sodium isn't accurate, we will be repeating the lab tomorrow or whatever plan you have.
But
So
whether that will give us immunity from the medical
yes,
issue.
I mean, if you have clearly documented that you did a lab test in the beginning and it's discrepant, you are ignoring it, willfully ignoring it. So, and then you say that you're going to monitor it.
In a practical way, I am not allowing them to print in a
That's
ABG.
fine as well. I mean, many times we get a call about hemolyzed potassium saying that it's a squeeze sample and they say the potassium is hemolyzed, but they won't release the whole result. So I tell them don't release the potassium alone because you don't want to waste the baby's sample unnecessarily. And we know on the blood gas, the potassium is normal. So these are the things you can do to minimize sampling and intervention.